as a write-in candidate. Rather than including him in the panel, I asked if he wanted to just take a few minutes at the beginning to introduce himself and his platform. So, and I have a request for you to come stand where I am. So take it away.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here with my son. This is Salam, my youngest. I greet everyone in the greeting words of peace. I have 4 children, a 30-year-old, a 25-year-old with 3 grandchildren, 18-year-old in college right now, and that's my youngest 10-year-old, Salam. Born and raised in Utica, New York. Went to Branagee on the east side. When they closed Branagee, ended up going to Roosevelt in Cornhill after Roosevelt, and they closed that too.
Yep.
Then I went to UFA, and yep, they closed that one too. I left here, went to Alfred State College. My father was an engineer at GE, came out of Detroit, his whole class, and my mother said you had to go to college. So I said, I'm gonna go the quickest way and make the most money, and so I went into electrical engineering at Alfred State. I realized that I'm more of a people person than behind the desk crunching numbers. So I came back to SUNA IT at the time when it was down in Mill Square. So y'all remember when it used to be.
I went there with you.
And some might know my mother. My mother is Carol Crooms. She was the director of activities and housing. I say that she was the wind beneath SUNY's wings because SUNY was an upper division. It did not have any dorms. And they had to find ways to keep the students here locally and keep them entertained and housed. So she was masterful in keeping the school up and running. And one of her biggest, I guess you can say, accomplishments was to see when it moved to Marcy and to see how it just expanded. And then shortly after that, she retired. I finished off at SUNY in business public management. And once again, I started a business on Bleecker Street, small business, opened up another one in Memphis, Tennessee. And I got struck by the ministry. So I left business, went into the ministry, 20 years as a chaplain for New York State Corrections. And then after I came out, I ended up taking care of my mother all over again. So I'm here, born and raised in Utica, New York. Understand what the city has gone through, what the city is going through. I'm excited about the economic development. And my friend who's a strategist said, can't keep God in this thing, man. But these are the 2 things, religion and politics, right? So I'm a write-in candidate who has a heavy leaning in spirituality. And my belief is that Utica not only needs an economic revival, it needs a spiritual revival. It's nothing to do with religion, it has all to do with God. Whereas even the atheists, when you understand how the founding fathers found this nation, the atheist is safe in an America where God is still at the center. So I thank you for having this time with me. I wish the best to the candidates here in the political arena, but hopefully you give me the opportunity by writing me in. So God has given me the hardest task of all. In order for me to get in as mayor, to help heal Utica, that's my platform, you literally have to write my name in and it can't be outside of the box. Thank you, God bless you.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, so moving on. Why don't we get started while we're all introducing ourselves? Why don't we move on and start introducing yourselves as well? So we're going to try to go in random order. Why don't we start with the middle? Mr. Cardilla, would you please take a few minutes to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a wonderful thing, so we have a packed house, and it's a great opportunity for all of you to hear from us. We've been doing this for about a year, so a lot of you know a lot about us. I'm Bob Cardillo. I'm excited about this race. We have 4 weeks from tomorrow, but who's counting? You know, 4 weeks from tomorrow. So, at any rate, I have the opportunity to be here with you tonight and to express to you how sincerely I feel about making our community strong and great. We've had great economic revival in our downtown area. I think that's wonderful. But what we need to do is focus on our neighborhoods. We need to focus on issues like crime. We need to focus on issues like infrastructure, development, and those are the things that we need to focus on for the next 4 years and beyond. So as I come to you today, I come to you with the experience to be able to do this on day one. I'm the only person in this race who's done economic development in New York State, done economic development for projects here locally, having worked with the program at ConMed to make sure they stayed here, moving them and not having them go to North Carolina. Worked with Par Technology when I worked for Governor Pataki, and as a private citizen in my consulting business, I was able to work and help projects like projects in for the MHA. We have a new project going on the corner of Bleecker and Broad and Mohawk Street. We also have done other projects in Utica. I was able to function to get through helping put dormitories at Utica University now. It was Utica College when we did the project. But at Utica University and a host of other projects that I've done in economic development.
All right,
So,
thank you, that's it.
okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, Ms. Friend?
Hi, everybody. So 4 years ago, you gave me the privilege of being your voice in the city council, being your council person. Before I was sworn in, I got to work by holding town hall meetings to address the flooding that devastated so much of South Utica in the aftermath of the Halloween storms that fall. When I took office, I made transparency my #1 priority. I held regular constituent hours and began publishing my newsletter. That newsletter quickly became popular because people found it helpful to them in understanding and interacting with their city government. I have shown time and again that I can and will communicate clearly and effectively to represent your interests. I have a track record of serving you by passing innovative legislation designed to make our neighborhoods more livable, such as my vacant building registry, my firing range legislation, and most recently, my tree ordinance. I restored the will of Utica voters by introducing the law that returned term limits to 8 years. I did this because it was what you wanted and what we all had a right to, even though I had to buck my own party to do so. When I first decided to run for mayor, some people expressed disappointment that this meant that I would no longer represent you on the Common Council. I'm here to tell you that if you like me as your council member, you're gonna love me as your mayor. I've shown again and again that I will listen to you, talk to you, bring fresh ideas to the city, and build the kinds of collaborative relationships that we need to continue to move this city forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Conley.
Hi, I'm Mike Delaney. Most of you in this room know me. You've seen multiple debates before. And I'd like to just begin by saying thank you for all coming. It's appreciated that you're still all with us at this point. I'd like to just talk, just for a brief moment, about the experience I have. 8 years in the council, working with the police chief, working with the mayor, working with the fire chief, working with the constituents, but I've gone through that multiple different times. What I want to actually stress today is something different, a quality that I've proceeded with, that was part of my platform in 2015, and that's the ability to maintain honesty and integrity and communication and collaboration and making sure people can be put in a room circumstance. Whether it was the hospital, an asphalt plant, how they wanted to put 3 turn circles on Oriskany Street, at John, Broad, and Genesee Street. Whether it was Stewart's, having different trees cut down, maintained, different neighborhoods, floods. Every single situation as council president, no matter how people have been happy, no matter how people have been frustrated or even angry, I've stuck with one absolute situation that must be maintained. That's a level head, that's honesty, and the ability to tell people what they need to hear within the truth of a situation, and not what they want to hear or not what they could hear, but what people need to hear to move forward and understand decisions in this community. If elected mayor, I'm going to proceed the same way, whether it's on the radio, on TV, via email, phone call, in person, door to door. That integrity will maintain and ring true for another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so to get onto the questions that you all submitted, and we had a broad range, so thanks for all of your thoughtful participation. So first, and Ms. Friend, we'll go to you first for this one. In your conversations with citizens, what's a common theme that you've identified regarding what they're looking to change and improve in the city?
I guess I would point to 2 things. The first is, not going to surprise you, paving, 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 right? So everybody wants to live on a road that is well paved. Not just because, of course, it's easier to drive down, but crumbling infrastructure makes our city look a little run down. So paving is really very interesting, how that came across so regularly across very different kinds of communities. The second is that all over this city, I've talked to, and my volunteers have talked to people who want more after-school activities for kids. There just isn't enough good stuff for kids to do. And I hear that in every neighborhood, from up and down the income scale, all over the city. There isn't enough fun, happy, safe things for kids to do after school. So I think it's really important that the city grow and develop a collaborative relationship with our school system so that we can, because we have these wonderful school buildings that shutter their doors at about 3:30. We need to work with the school district to keep those buildings open, and we need to work with nonprofits to provide the programming inside of schools that can offer happy, safe, healthy things for kids to do after school.
Great, thank you.
As I've gone around this community, rapping on people's doors, discussing issues with them, one of the biggest issues that comes up for me is crime, particularly in neighborhoods in Cornhill, neighborhoods in West Utica, and also here in South Utica and every other neighborhood in our community. And the other thing I continue to hear is infrastructure, roads. People hit a pothole, there goes your tire. We all know that, we've all had it, it's all happened. And I think the other issue that has come up is the idea of cooperation. I think people want to see our government be more cooperative with each other and with other government entities, like working with the county, working with our state agencies, and also working with our federal agencies. So in one instance, when I talk about crime, I've proposed a program, a precinct program to have crime stopped by working with the police department and having a precinct in every part of this community: Cornhill, West Utica, North Utica, South Utica, and East Utica. To do that, to have officers that aren't necessarily in full uniform, but have them be a part of the community, have them be kind of their friend in that neighborhood, and also be able to have our codes officers in there, and also have other opportunities for administrators to go in and visit periodically. And we can do this because there's a considerable amount of property that the city owns and dilapidated buildings that we can use, or if need be, put a trailer on a vacant piece of property temporarily. And I think it's a good way to include people in the community, make them feel like they're a part of it. We're not telling them what they want, they're telling us what we need to do.
All right, thank you, that's time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm going to give two sides of some experience that I had. One from council president, acting as council president, one from actually interacting with constituents in 2015, 2019, and then now going door to door. As council president, the biggest thing people have reached out for is information. The ability to understand what the council is going to do before they do it. In 2016, I did, a column in the OD so that for every single council meeting, anything that was put to committee, any legislation that was proposed, anything that council was going to do, even a meeting, was in the newspaper before it happened. And I watched over my first term people integrate with the council. First, they were nervous. They were concerned that the people would come and see what they were doing. But what we ended up doing was becoming more collaborative. We integrated what people wanted into our decisions, and people started trusting those decisions more. So that still rings true now. It's a little different. As mayor, it's going to be a situation of the mayor interacting with the council. That is what people are asking for now. Why does the mayor not represent decisions that come from his office of the council? Whatever I do if I'm elected, whether it's the budget, I propose legislation through the departments that go to the council, I will be there personally to actually represent that whenever necessary, whenever requested, and whenever I feel it needs to be represented. The other thing for the people, absolutely youth engagement. People have been crying for it for years. 4 or 5 years ago, I tried to do it with the 5th Ward council person, and there was no appetite for it. We couldn't even get the keys for the building. Okay, we absolutely have to create programs. I think there's 2 classifications, 6 to 12, young kids, they like being in school. Okay, 13 to kind of early adulthood, those kids, they don't want to be at school after school. We have to create engagement outside school. Those are the things people are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Glean, I'm going to go right back to you with this next one. It is difficult to get around Utica without a car. What will you do as mayor to improve public transportation?
That's a really good question. Okay, so there's a couple things. The first is working with Centro. Again, door to door. This is something I still have in my spreadsheets from 2019. I went door to door, and one of the biggest asks from the constituents within Lower East Utica, Cornhill, West Utica, it absolutely was different and better bus schedules. It was an ask that I want to go to work on Sunday, and I don't have a bus line in my neighborhood. So that's number one. We absolutely need better public transportation. I have already talked to people at Centro about this. Now, as a mayor, that conversation will be different. I'm just the council president now. The other thing is sidewalks. I know this is possible, but when I go through the neighborhoods, it's not just sidewalks that aren't kept up. It's not just sidewalks that need better ADA compliance, because we're working on that. You see that in all the corners. That's mandated, and we're going above and beyond that with the city already. There's a lot of areas that don't even have sidewalks. So as mayor, I do want to designate certain neighborhoods which are within the HUD districts already, and implement sidewalk programs which will put sidewalks where there aren't sidewalks. So when you see kids walking to Watson Williams, they aren't going to be on a sidewalk for a block and then in the street for another block. We do need to work on it. That's one example. I have many more, but we only have 2 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friend,
Thank you. So, okay, that's right. We do need to work with Centro, and we do need to improve our sidewalks. That means that we also need to figure out how to make sure that our sidewalks are clear in the winter. And that may mean that the city needs to take over the control of the sidewalks, which is something that they've done in Syracuse. They've done it recently. It's working well. I've talked to Ben Walsh, the mayor there, about how that's working. So I do agree that we need to have a much more robust commitment to sidewalks as a form of public transportation. We also need bike lanes. Right, more and more people are using bikes, especially with the advent of electric bikes. They are using bikes as their primary form of transportation. They have the right in the state of New York to ride their bikes on any street here in the city of Utica. Any cyclist has the right to ride a bike on any street in the city of Utica, except like the arterial or the thruway, obviously. So we need to make sure that if people are going to ride bikes, and they are, we see bike ridership up all across the city, that we need to make sure that we allow them to do so safely. So better Centro service, better sidewalks, bike lanes for the people who choose to ride bikes. Those are 3 things that we need to do to improve transportation.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't want to be repetitive, but those are 3 things that are, by the time it got to me, it gets to be repetitive.
Hard to be last.
It's hard. It is tough sometimes. However, with regard to Centro in the buses, take a look at the buses that we drive around here. They're huge. When I look, because I've got a bus line right in front of me on the corner of Rupter and Culver, and I look at that bus and it's empty. And I thought to myself, and years ago, this is, some of you might remember, some of you might not, your parents probably would, but when Centro took over the Utica Bus Company, one of the things, and I was involved back then with Congressman Mitchell, one of the things we talked about was if they came in here, we were going to be afraid that we weren't going to get service because now everything's out of Syracuse. But they've done a decent job. What I would think that they could use is smaller buses in certain runs, and maybe because of the cost of the bus wouldn't be as much to operate because it's a smaller bus. So maybe we can increase runs and things like that. So the other thing I want to talk about is just quickly, as a member of the school board, we are working on programs that are going to be able to work with the city in order to open up some of these schools. And we've already started talking about that. We have our new superintendent, Dr. Davis, has talked about this considerably, and as a board, we're very interested in doing that. So I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cardillo, since you had to go last, we'll let you go first this time.
Wait a minute, I need water.
Okay. As mayor, will you continue to support and update the City of Utica master plan that was adopted and involved citizen input a number of years ago, after a 50-year waiting period since the last plan was adopted for Utica?
Master plan changes. How long ago was that master plan started? And if you look at what we've done with downtown, the new hospital, a lot of things have changed. So in order to, there may be parts of the master plan that can be implemented, but I think we need to recognize that we have changed as a community. Our population is growing, our neighborhoods are growing, we've got a tremendous need for housing in this community, where I think the master plan needs to focus on housing, needs to focus on neighborhoods, needs to focus on people. We've got the buildings now, and I was proud yesterday, and we were both there at the opening of the hospital. It's great. It's a beautiful facility, and it really says a lot for the community. But we really need to focus on changing some of the things that may be in that master plan as a result of a lot of the development that's been going on. So.
Okay, thank you. I think you're second this time.
Thank you. I think that, part of what's happened is that, so we do these master plans, and the administration actually enacts a lot of it, but we don't know about it because City Hall does a very poor job of communicating to us what they're doing. So the first thing I would like to do with that big, beautiful master plan is we need to take it out, dust it off, show it to everybody, and have big meetings where we explain what we've accomplished, and then start thinking about what else do we want to accomplish. What needs to change? So we need to have big town hall meetings about that master plan in particular. Show people what we've done, ask them what we think about where we stand now, Are there parts that need to be adjusted? Do we need to revise some of our ambitions from that master plan in order to sort of move forward? But I think it's really a shame that these master plans get developed with a lot of public input, but then there isn't a lot of public input in terms of follow-up, right? So we don't keep it out, keep it in front of you, tell you how we're doing as we go along. We could do, as a city, a much better job of informing people of those sorts of things. So that would be my approach to that master plan. Let's get it out, let's show you where we've accomplished things, and then together let's decide whether we need to accomplish more things specifically in that master plan or whether we need to make some revisions.
And so first and foremost, I'd like to address why I believe the master plans are typically created and then kind of just thrown aside. It's very political. It takes a long time to develop a plan like that, and when a new administration comes in, they just want to do different things. Those different things sometimes ignore history, ignore the current state of the city, ignore the people that have moved here recently, ignore the businesses that have started, and ignore the actual city as it sits. We just embarked on a large piece of our city code called our zoning update. And believe it or not, a lot of the work and account, and Councilperson Friend was part of this as well. We had to address what was really happening in the city now as we looked at our zoning update. So step one would be merging the last master plan that had happened, take into account the things that have or have not happened, and merge, have the actual department, the actual economic development department, merge what we've done with the zoning code update into that master plan and then present that to the public. Of course, input is huge. We need that. We need that. But a big part of that is going to be relying on the council members as well. As a mayor, I want to engage the council. Yes, they're the legislative branch. The mayor's office is the executive branch. But the actual council people are the boots on the ground. They're the people that go out into the community and represent each district. We have 6 of them plus 3 council at large. So myself, if elected, with the council, will absolutely not only renew, but without ignoring the past, renew the master plan with the public's help and move the community forward into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friend, I'm going to go on to you for this next question. Would you please tell us all current forms of employment that you have or that you intend to have if you're elected mayor, include any positions that you receive any kind of salary or wages or independent contractor?
Okay. I'm a member of the Common Council, obviously. I think we are getting about $17,000, $18,000 a year for that now. I am the executive director of Color Skip Chenango Arts Festival. That's a 2-day arts festival down in Norwich, New York. I tendered my resignation. That's an independent contractor, and I think I'm getting $15,000 for that this year. I tendered my resignation to that as soon as I won the primary because they need a lot of notice, right? They needed to hire a new executive director who would work under me as we actually put the festival on. So come what may, that my contract with them expires at the end of December. I have been a part-time instructor for 15 years up at SUNA Poly, making about $16,000 a year, and I resigned from that in order to dedicate myself fully to my campaign. So those are my 3 current jobs. Until I got into the Common Council, I also ran a small jewelry business in which I designed, produced, and marketed a line of sterling silver jewelry. So that was up until about 2020, the pandemic, and the council kind of did away with that. If I'm elected mayor, I will be nothing but the mayor. I will have no other form of employment. If I ever am so lucky as to be asked to give a talk at an academic institution and it comes with an honorarium, which I don't think is very likely, but I promise here publicly that I will donate any proceeds to some charitable cause. So the mayor pays currently in the current year $108,000. I don't expect to need or want any other form of employment if I'm the mayor of Utica.
I'm currently the president Cardinal organization, which is a consulting firm that I've had for a number of years since I left the federal government, working for a number of organizations. They all know I'm running for mayor, and they all know that if I'm elected on January 1st, Bob's not around anymore. That's it, I'm done. I also am a member of the Utica School Board, which, by the way, we don't get paid. Some people think we get paid in the school district, but we don't. But I would have to resign from my school board district on effective January 1st. My other big job is I take my grandson to school. So I hope people don't mind that on January 1st, my grandson wants me to still take him to school. So at any rate, I will be a full-time mayor. There's no question. I'm there for the duration. I think it's a job that needs a great deal of attention. If you're not in it mentally and physically all the time, I don't know how you can do this job with any other interest that you might have. So, also, I'm at a point in my life when I can do it. So, again, other than my grandson, that's how I'm going to direct it. So, thank you.
All right, so right now, my full-time job at this current juncture is I am the director of an industry solutions team at a company called Keysight. I spend between 40 and 60 hours a week doing that. It's very involved. It's working in New York City. It's working in Toronto. It's working all over the place. And it's very time consuming. I'm also the council president. For the past 8 years, 10 to 25 hours a week have been absolutely dedicated to the city, on top of all my other work. That also is paid. Those first two are paid. I also have another paid job, which I don't do that often anymore, but I'm frequently called upon to do this. Some of you may have seen me on the Stanley stage. I'm a musician. I'm a professional musician. That is something that I've always done, and I will continue to do. If Hannah Park has a live band because I'm elected mayor, then sorry, but I'm a professional musician. And I've also been known to work side jobs. Haven't done it in a while, but if someone needs to pour concrete, I'm either shoveling concrete or pushing a wheelbarrow with stone. So moving on, right? If I'm elected mayor, I'm going to be a full-time mayor. The current full-time job I have right now, there's papers signed, okay? That company knows I'm going to be a full-time mayor. Day one, I'm going to be leave without pay, okay? Actually moving forward as the mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Cardillo, I'll go to you first this time. This is kind of a long question, but it's for context. Okay, so there's a lack of rental properties for middle-income residents, those who can't afford the high-end lofts of downtown, but also make too much to qualify for the new low-income housing complexes. With the lack of options for this price range, landlords are taking advantage and raising prices. How would you help to address this issue and prevent residents leaving Utica in order to find rental housing options for, again, middle income?
Yeah, as I said earlier in my opening, there's a significant problem with housing in this community. And for affordable housing, for market rate housing, and as we all know, the rents now are extremely high, extremely high. So I think we need to work with developers that are willing and able to look at affordable housing, particularly for our seniors. I think there's a big need for senior housing. There's a need for housing in our communities, and I think part of what we need to do and what I will do in revitalizing West Utica and Cornhill is to look at housing projects there. I think it's vitally important that we do that. And I have a strategy based on my experience working for the Department of Housing and Urban Development for 8 years. We know how to get things done, and there's a lot of opportunity that we can be able to do. So I'd like to make one comment, and I want to thank you, Michael, for finally saying you're going to be a full-time mayor, because during the primary campaign, you said it publicly on radio that you were going to continue to keep your job because you needed to keep your 401k.
Didn't you already answer
So,
that question?
Excuse me?
Didn't you already answer that
I
question?
used part of my 10 minutes to say it. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
Let him
I'm
go.
complimenting him. Shouldn't be a problem with that. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, since you've already been talking. Rental properties,
Yes.
middle income.
All right. All right, so two things. We have a lot of different projects coming online that are rental. Olbiston, okay, that's one of them. Park Edge Apartments, which has just been completely renovated. Many of us were at the ribbon cutting for that. We have another project on Broad Street. We have two projects right now coming to fruition in Cornhill. There are many projects underway right now, so our housing stock is increasing. That doesn't mean we can't keep that going. Rather than talking about larger projects like that, I do want to speak to the Urban Renewal Authority. We take projects, on for taxes. Okay, we have to do stuff with that. We have to return that back to the tax rolls. URA typically holds the properties, keeps them in some condition and sells them. I want to expand that capability. The Urban Renewal Authority can be working with those properties in a different way where they can actually maintain the properties. They can assess the properties and see if the roof is collapsing, why are we not investing in that property before we sell it? Whether it's rental or the actual owner-occupied property, which has other rental units, we don't do a good enough job of returning those properties back to the tax rolls and back to the actual capability of renting to middle-income families. So that's just one example. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a housing crisis now, not enough housing for the people who live here. We're the second fastest growing city in the state of New York. So we need to build. And we need to build up and down the income scale. So we need lower income housing, we need middle income housing, which is often subsidized and people don't realize this. They often call it workforce housing. So you can be a full-time nurse and qualify for a housing subsidy. So we need to build more of that kind of housing. We also need to continue to expand our Section 8 program. We actually have just recently reduced the waiting time for Section 8 housing from over 3 years to 1.5 years. That's remarkable, and Crystal Curley, who runs that program out of City Hall, gets a lot of credit for that. We need to continue to invest in our Section 8 program in order to continue and help her carry on her success. We need to build as much housing as quickly as we can, and we need to build all sorts of housing, including we need to subsidize home ownership in the poorest parts of our city, in West Utica, in Cornhill, and we need to build single-family subsidized homes that people can buy on all those empty lots that Ed Hanna had to create in the 80s when we were suffering from all that arson, right? So that's why if you drive through Cornhill, there's empty lot after empty lot, because we had to tear down houses before they burned. So now it's time to start rebuilding single-family homes and subsidize the home ownership of them. That will do a lot to help Cornhill. It'll do a lot to help our city in general. Senator Gillibrand is working on a federal housing bill, which will make a lot of federal money available for housing across New York State, and we need to be able to tap into that as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Bellini, I'll be coming to you first on this next one. Just picking out which one of me. Okay, will you be appointing yourself as Public Safety Commissioner, or will you appoint an independent Public Safety Commissioner? And in your vision, what does public safety look like for our community?
Okay. All right, so two related but separate topics. No, I will not be the Public Safety Commissioner. I don't believe the mayor should hold both of those positions. It creates a conflict because then the mayor ends up in a room talking to himself about what we should do together, right? It's just not, it's not good. I mentioned that on the radio a couple times. Who's the public safety commissioner talking to? It has to be an independent position. The position itself has not been actually utilized appropriately in the past 12 years. It needs to actually be reevaluated. I've spoken to the police chief and the police union about this. I've spoken to the fire chief and the fire union about this. In part, that's why I'm endorsed by both of those unions. And that position doesn't end up the boss of those departments. That position ends up a liaison. That position should end up somebody who understands negotiation, understands communication with the public. While that position is very involved in many things, one thing I believe it should be doing is explaining to the public things that happened today or yesterday, while our departments are keeping us safe tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we go to Michael?
I will not appoint myself as the public safety commissioner. We will hire an independent one. So that everybody understands there has to be a public safety commissioner. It's required by our charter. So the reason that mayors in the past have appointed themselves is because the position literally can't sit empty. There has to be a public safety commissioner. It should be someone other than the mayor. And not just for the reasons that Michael said, but also because if public safety is our #1 priority in the city, then it should be someone's full-time and exclusive job. But we also need to take this moment and take a broader approach and develop holistic, organic, broad-based, long-term approaches to public safety. I talked earlier about the need to have good activities for kids after school. Good activities for kids after school is a public safety investment. Reducing blight in the more low-income parts of our city is a public safety investment. Investing in our roads and making sure that we have a long-term plan for paving and rebuilding our roads, that's a public safety investment. So I want a public safety commissioner who's going to take a broad-based, long-term approach to public safety that includes not just police and fire, but the engineering department, the codes department. Our codes officers are out there making sure that people are safe inside their homes, right? Making sure that the porch has a railing that won't let them fall down as they go down the steps, etc. Our DPW is also part of our public safety approach, making sure that we are safe when we have extreme weather events. So there's an awful lot of investments, long-term, broad-based investments we can make in the city that have public policy implications. And I want a public safety commissioner who's going to be able to think about all of those things.
Thank you.
I think we all agree on none of us are going to be the public safety commissioner. I'm not, Michael's not, Celeste is not. I think it's critically important that we have a public safety commissioner who has a background, and I'll tell you where I'm going to look. FBI, Treasury Department, Secret Service, New York State or any other state commander, or someone from first responders. I think it's important that we have somebody who's a professional, and there are a lot of folks out there that are retired that will be happy to, they want to keep busy, be happy to do something like this, and I think that's where we can draw from. And I also want them to be able to be the eyes and ears of public safety and crime in this community. If I am able to be elected and implement my precinct plan, that's where we're going to be integral in terms of not only police, but our codes department and other departments can have relationships within these neighborhoods. And I think the public safety commissioner needs to be as close to the mayor as anything, because as we know, crime is an issue. So without a doubt, I will not have a public safety, I will have a public safety commissioner, and I will not be it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick, I don't know if it's necessarily a rebuttal, but it's a clarification here. So we're talking about the charter. We have a codes commissioner. We have a DPW commissioner. We have an urban and economic development commissioner. The public safety commissioner is going to be parallel to them, working collaboratively with those other commissioners under the direction of the mayor if I'm elected. The mayor sets the policy, the overall policy for the city, and getting police, fire, codes, and DPW all working together, having a public safety commissioner working with all of those other commissioners is part of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, Ms. Graham, we'll go to you first for this next one. Can you tell us about a major infrastructure project or citywide initiative you'll prioritize in your first 6 months in office?
I can, actually. I'm really disappointed with the streetlights in the city right now. When I first came on the council voted to borrow for $11.5 million to replace our streetlights. Now, what we were really replacing was the lamp itself up at the top. We were switching over to LED from incandescent in order to save ourselves a lot of money. Great. I was all for it. It was a big bond, but we immediately started saving a lot of money. It also meant that we own the equipment rather than leasing it from National Grid. Great. How many streetlights are out? Too many. There are 5 streetlights in a row that are out in front of Munson. On the other side of Munson, running right alongside DeSales, 5 streetlights in a row that are out. They're out all over the place. Now, what I've been told by engineering is that it had to do with the independent contractor that we hired to install the new lights didn't use the right crimps, and so that one after another those connections aren't working. So first we need to go back to that independent contractor and insist that they either refund us or come back and do the work themselves. But we need as quickly as possible to get every lamp working, but also, and we've all seen this, if you drive down Genesee Street towards downtown right now, there are all these old rusty green bases on the ground that have been replaced with other lights, but the green bases are still on the ground. It looks terrible. It's not safe. It makes the city look shabby. So I want stem to stern, is that the phrase? Stem to stern. I want to look at every single street light, make sure we have street lights where we need them, make sure that the street lights that we do have are in fact working appropriately, and make sure that any old and sort of equipment that is no longer functioning, that it is removed and covered over, etc. Not too long ago, a green light pole at the corner of Auburn and Genesee, right over there by Price Chopper, came down in a storm. And you might think a pole can't get blown over by a storm, but it can. So we need to look at all of those. Those are those old green lampposts. They weren't made with galvanized metal. All the salt in the winter has corroded them. You can see right through the bases up and down Genesee Street. I want to fix that right away.
Okay, thank you.
The one in front of here fell over, and the only thing that kept it from destroying our awning was it got caught on the wire until they came and pulled it away. But it fell right in front of the cafe. So,
All right,
she's right
we
about
have examples. All right, go ahead.
I think one of the first things that I would work on in terms of infrastructure would be a better plan for paving. We've all talked about our roads. You know, you hit a pothole and you blow a tire. So I think we need to have a much better plan. I think there are 2 things that are important. And again, some of the stuff I can't address because I'm not on the council, but I can say this, my eyes are opened. When I see the water company come and make a cut after the road's been paved 3 months before, and they never put the road back the way they found it, and neither does National Grid. So I think one of the problems is we don't have enough of our own support people looking at the way they're bringing the road back. I think our engineering department needs to be stronger. I think we need to focus on making the water authority and making National Grid do what they're supposed to do. Put the road back the way you found it. You tore it up, so put it back back the way you found it. The other thing I look at, and again, my eyes don't deceive me, I watch when they pave a road. You ever watch the way you take a look that they pave one half then the other half? In the middle, you got that crack, expansion and contraction. Guess what? A year after they've paved it, they've already got to start filling in because nobody paid attention to the way it was paved. I've seen other communities and other cities in the Northeast that paved the roads the same way, and that crack in the middle of the road does not turn out to be pothole filled a year after it's done. So that's another focus we need, so that our people in engineering go after the contractors that are paving these roads and make sure that they're doing it right. So I think the first thing that I would look at in terms of infrastructure would be the roads, because that's something that everybody talks about.
First 6 months of an administration sets the tone for the next 4 years. Something that we've been having increasing trouble with over and over and over again. I felt like in my house prior is flooding. We absolutely, in the first 6 months of this next administration, and I will direct this, have to assess our storm water mitigation system. And we already have key projects that have studies complete so we can start to take action on things like Sequoia Creek. Now, if we don't do this now and actually concentrate on it and be shovel ready and understand where we need to do what we want to do, we won't be able to take advantage of the potential bipartisan infrastructure bill that everyone keeps talking about, bringing billions of dollars to New York State. Flooding is a problem. Now, what's nice about this, and this is something that happened many years ago, you work on stormwater mitigation system, guess what else you work on? You work on the roads, because you can't do one without the other. As an administration, I think we can accomplish both, and it will be insanely impactful to this community, because we will get so much bang for the buck by concentrating on something that hurts so many. And then for the paving, I come from an engineering background. I've iterated through this in multiple different debates. We're going to implement an IT-based accountability system so that we can actually track what we do, what the water authority does, what National Grid does, and actually start to just track how we take care of our roads. It's the biggest problem is accountability. But we're going to dovetail that from stormwater. Thank you.
Understanding the legislative process is crucial for a mayor's role in guiding the city's direction. Have you ever written legislation or been directly involved in the legislative drafting process? And if so, could you share your experience and how it's influenced your perspective?
The answer is yes. I remember the age myself now. I worked for Congressman Donald Mitchell. I don't know if any of you remember. He was before Sherry Bowler. I was on his staff. I was his legislative assistant. I drafted legislation for Congress for his submission. We were able to get some really good things through. I understand that process. I understand not only the process, but I also understand how it's going to be enacted and how we're going to get it passed. In my experience working with Congress, both with Congressman Mitchell and at HUD, because we had a lot of legislation in HUD that we had to work with both the Senate and the House. But locally, you have to work with the council. And I will have a great relationship with the council because we will always work together. We may not always agree, and that's also a good thing in government, but we'll work together. We'll make sure that we're not going to be like they are in Washington now, where we can't even get a Speaker of the House, which is a sad commentary when we have so many things happening in our world. But that's what we need to do. We need to work cooperatively, not only with our local council folks, but also with the county and with the county board of legislators, because there's a lot of things that we're going to be doing together. So that's my experience with drafting legislation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I just quickly jotted notes, and this isn't going to be complete because I've been on the Common Council for almost 4 years. And that is, of course, one of the very primary roles of being a member of the Common Council is to bring forward the legislation that you think is going to serve the people that you represent. So in no particular order, I drafted a tree ordinance. Now, we did that by looking at other cities' tree ordinances and picking out the parts of those that we thought would work for us, but then also taking that to Dave Short, who's our Commissioner of Public Works, taking it to Marcus Phillips, who is our Commissioner of Codes, talking to a variety of people to see how is this going to work here. And that's one of the sort of lessons I've learned from drafting legislation. You find, for the most part, a lot of legislation that's already working in other places, but that doesn't mean it'll work here exactly. So you have to collaborate with other city partners right here in the city, other department heads, etc. So that's one of the things I learned. I also drafted firing range regulation. There was a very credible worry that the gun store over there was going to open an indoor firing range. That made very many people in this neighborhood very nervous. So I found legislation that would regulate it in certain ways in order to make sure that we in this neighborhood would remain safe. I drafted a vacant building registry based upon a very similar one that is used by Albany. And I also drafted the local law on term limits. So those are 4 things off the top of my head. I think that there are more if I really crawled through my record. But writing legislation has been one of the most satisfying things that I've done. And it gets you into the administration to really talk to the people who are going to be in charge of applying these laws. So how will this work? Will this work? Will that work? And you fine tune it as you go so that you can come out with something at the end that city departments are really going to be capable of working with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. As council president and as a member of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, I have written legislation. A lot of people don't think the council president can not participate, mostly because I don't vote, okay? But the Film Commission legislation, for example, we now have an established film commission. That is something that I worked on for many years, all the way back to 2016, when we established the Stanley as a qualified production facility. I did that not as council president, just as kind of a guy, but worked with people to do that. Over time, we had to figure out how to create a film commission. There was multiple different ways. I had to work with Corporation Council, multiple different community members, and help Corporation Council, in part, working with ESD, draft legislation to establish that within the scope of our own city code so we can have a film commission. On the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, I've written budget amendments, for example. One which didn't pass was a resolution to create a budget line prior to the 100th anniversary of our Olmsted Parks to create an actual line to spruce up those parks and actually have something to take care of it before that. So a lot of different things. Something more important, though, is I've helped 4 different councils write legislation. Council members have come to me and said, how can I change the city code? I find the piece in the city code. I show them how to change it. If they need help from Judge Garamone, if they need help from Corporation Council, if they need help from the departments, I've been the person putting everybody in the room to do that. As council president, I have been working with every single department of this city to actually enact change. I want to take that experience into the office of mayor. And I've seen it work, and I've seen it not work. I've seen it in good times and in absolutely contentious times. And no matter what, I've kept a level head and made sure we can get the job done for the actual constituents. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Backup water. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're on page back to next, so pick up. Okay. What will you do to end corruption in City Hall and the negative effects it's had on our community? You don't have to share the perspective of this person, but acknowledge that this is how people are feeling. So
Okay.
what will you do to end corruption in City Hall?
Who's over?
You're going first.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Over the past 8 years and for my whole life, there's something that I've been doing. That's been proceeding with absolute integrity. No matter what happens when someone asks me a question, I give them the answer based on fact and based on truth. I have an 8-year resume of that as council president, and I have a lifetime of that in our community. A lot of you have known me since I was literally a kid, and that has been the case since going back to junior high school when I found a rat behind a photocopier and took a picture of it to my mother's chagrin and ended up at the school board saying, clean up my school, because Seymour's not good enough for us this year, even though you ruined Donovan and the insulation had to be torn out. Right, that happened. I've been like that since I was a kid, intrinsically. So to end corruption, you have to proceed with absolute, direct honesty, no matter how hard it is. If you have to tell somebody, looking them in the face, an answer, even though you know you might lose a vote, even though tomorrow they might not want to talk to you, you have to stay calm, keep a level head, and do the right thing. That's the tone I'm going to set for the entire city. Every single employee, every single person that comes to collaborate with us, whether it's an upstate official, a downstate official, someone from another municipality, that's how our city is going to function, with absolute integrity. Thank you.
So what's so interesting about that question is that it tells us whether you agree that the city is corrupt or not. A lot of people out there don't trust us, right? That there's this real crisis of trust between the people who live in this city, who invest in this city, who are raising their kids in this city. This real lack of trust for their government. So I think the first thing that we have to do to begin to heal that crisis of distrust is to be as transparent as we can possibly be with all city expenditures. And we can do that in part by rebuilding the website and making lots and lots of information easily, publicly available. So that's one thing I want to do. And it's sort of what my newsletter has done, right? Let's lay it all out there month after month so that you can see how I'm operating, so you can see how I'm voting, and that transparency, I hope, can generate trust. I'm going to bring that same idea to citywide. The other thing that we need to do is to pay very close attention to the recent audit that State Controller Thomas DiNapoli made of our ethics in this city. You can find this on his website, right? So the New York State Controller has a wonderful website where he lists all of the audits that happen around the state that he conducts, and he very recently published one on our ethics and came out with a very specific set of things that we should do, such as posting rules about what kind of gifts you can and can't accept if you work for the city. Those, he suggests, ought to be posted in places where every employee can see them, that you can't accept gifts, etc. So we need to look at Tom DiNapoli's prescriptions and follow them. And one of the first things I'll do in office is to request a meeting with the controller in order to sit down with him and really think through very concretely how we need to enact those. And we also need to really seriously look at our ethics board and ask them why they haven't enacted any of those reforms suggested by Tom DiNapoli, who I think most people in the state, if you know who he is, you know that he has as much integrity as anybody else in the state. He's telling us to do certain things. It's really problematic, I think, that we're not taking his advice. If I'm the mayor, we will.
Thank you.
I think the question stems from history. You know, we've had some issues here in the past, which I don't believe we have currently. But history tells us that people are concerned, and that's probably the reason why that question was asked. I can tell you a little story. When I was appointed by President Bush, and I was sworn into my office in New York City with HUD as the regional director for community planning and development, the second day I was there, my secretary says to me, "You got a visitor." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "It's one of the investigators." I said, "Geez, I just got here." So he came in, he said, "I want to introduce myself to you because you're from Utica." said, yeah, I said, well, you know how much time we spent in Utica? This was during Hannah's reign. You know, remember that we had down at City Hall, not just the park, but when you had the tin can there? So he said, with the what? Yeah,
The watering
the
can?
watering can. He said, we spent a lot of time in Utica. I have to tell you that one of the places where a lot of this stuff comes from is you got to dot the i's and cross the t's with HUD. If you don't do it right, they're all over it. The investigators are not, and it's not fun to go through it. And I was so, in one sense, I was embarrassed because he was making a joke out of it. I didn't think it was very funny because this is my home, you know, and we're talking about, hey, you know, you're from Utica. I wanted to meet you. So I think that we need to be cognizant of what we do in City Hall, and I think there are things that we need to do to put in place to make sure that the people believe that there's no corruption. That's what's important.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose if I'm up here as a rebuttal, but it was stated that there's no corruption right now. And I'm not going to stand here and not explicitly state that there isn't. I watch streets get switched from district to district after the paving list comes out. There's somebody here that was affected by it in the room. The corruption doesn't necessarily have to come from malice, though. It doesn't have to come from ill intent. It comes from a lack of consistent operations. Sometimes it's ill will, sometimes it's just you're not doing your job. Okay, I just wanted to make that statement. There absolutely is corruption in this city right now, and we have to stop it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cardillo, I'll come to you first this time. Many Utica residents are working hard to strengthen their communities. What are some of the positive trends you've seen taking place? And as mayor, how will you support these efforts and inspire more engaged citizenship?
First of all, I think we have a great deal of opportunity that our small businesses are taking advantage of in this community. Part of it as a result of the hospital. The other day, I heard that 76 is going to be opening. Also, they usually close in the summer. The restaurant, 72, the restaurant that's attached to the Odd. Thank you.
Yeah.
They're going to stay open during the summer because of the influx of people that are going to be working at the hospital. So I think, got a fan. So I think our small businesses, and I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and I go to a lot of these small openings of little restaurants and other businesses that have been opening, and I think it's just wonderful. That participation is really good for a city of our size. And I also have gone to a lot of, not just the forums, but I've also gone to other meetings in West Utica or North Utica. These forums have been full. And also the meetings that they have on the off months when they're just talking about the neighborhood stuff. It's great to see the participation that people are there. It means that people care. And I think that's vitally important that we as citizens care. And in my administration, we'll make sure that people will have access. City Hall's going to be open. If you want to come and talk about an issue, you're going to be able to talk to any one of the administrators, any one of the commissioners, the mayor, anywhere. I mean, we need to be open and make sure that our community has a voice, because it's not coming from up on high, it's coming from the people. So.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Glee?
So to reiterate, something that has truly inspired me, first off, there's so much, but I want to talk about something very, very important to me, something close to me. Years ago, I was asked to go to a meeting at the public library, Patrick Johnson. And my first meeting, it was pretty serious, okay? We had conversations in that room that it sometimes got heated. Sometimes people cried, okay? We talked about the differences between lower socioeconomic issues and higher socioeconomic achievements that cause other people to be disadvantaged. We talked about things like race. Okay, we had real conversations in that room. Patrick Johnson then passed away. And this year I was invited to different meetings. Rebuild the Village. They're on James Street. It was first a pilot that we've now renewed. And in those meetings we have police officers, we have community members, we have people who've just moved here, we've had people who've lived here forever. And we have those same conversations. And the reason it inspires me is we talk about the things that actually rebuild our community. We talk about the things that actually are issues within our community, whether it's vacant houses, whether it's race issues, whether it's finding new ways for the police department, because we do have many ways. There's certain people who keep saying we don't do this, but we have many ways we interact with the community right now with our police officers and our public safety officials, okay? But the ways we can keep connecting with the community and making our community a safer place to live and a place where we live together as neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that I'm really proud of having achieved here in South Utica in the last 4 years is that people in South Utica now understand how their government works better than they did before, many people. And that's because of my newsletter. And not just the regular South Utica newsletter that tells you how I voted and what great concerts there are next week, but my other set of newsletters, which is called How Utica Works, in which I have explained governmental functions over and over again, drilled down into how the DPW works, how the Zoning Board of Appeals works, etc. So I have a real strong track record of explaining to people how their government works so that they know how to engage it. One of the things, another law that I passed was I also passed a local law which allowed council people to speak at boards which don't have public hearings. So if there's a zoning board of appeals, there's a public hearing, everybody gets to speak. But a planning board doesn't necessarily have a public hearing. So you don't necessarily get to have your voice represented. I passed a local law which requires the planning board and requires the Scenic and Historic Commission to allow council members to speak. One of the things which I'm really committed to doing, in addition to continuing to make sure that people understand how their government works and how they can engage it, is that I'm going to do everything I can to encourage the planning board, the Scenic and Historic Commission, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, which do get their authority from the state, so the mayor can't just do things by herself. But I want those boards to all meet no earlier than 5:30, right? So when we have boards and they say, oh, any member of the public can attend, but they start at 4, that really blocks a lot of people out. So I think that we need to pay attention to the conditions which allow people to engage their government, and I think we need to do a lot to inform people about how their government works, and I think that we need to encourage people to continue to engage their government. And the last thing that I'm also very proud of is that I have consistently defended public comment at the Common Council meeting. I've written about it in the newspaper. I've passed changes to our rules of order in order to preserve it, etc.
Great, thank you. Pre-submitted questions, and we can take a few audience questions, and I wanted to ask if it would be okay with you if we do it like lightning round style and each only answer like 1 minute, so we can try to get through a few more. Okay, cool. Does anyone have a question? Oh, we have a lot of questions. All right, Stefan, why don't you go first?
For development downtown, the building north of Fort Schuyler Club, would you all work with Bowers, the company, to develop that?
Anyone go ahead. Lightning round, there's no rules.
All right, you got the mic. Go.
Except that you don't have one.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Bowers is a problem. Significant problem. I live on, I said I live on Culver Ave. Corner Culver and Bleeker's another Bowers project. Drive by there. It's terrible, okay? They've got the other properties you've mentioned. They also have got other properties that I believe they've already gotten money on. I'm sure you could both talk about that from COVID money. That's not the way a developer is supposed to operate, okay? We need to have developers that are going to be doing their job, and they're gonna be committing to what they're gonna do and do it, not just leave it empty the way it is. I'm tired of driving by and looking at a piece of property that has not been developed, that I know we put money into it, and that there's not anybody working there. At least if I could see some activity, it'd be nuts. Once in a blue moon, they're moving a couple of blocks around. That's not development.
All right, thank you. Why do you have then?
I'll go.
It's chaos,
All right.
sorry, okay.
No, it's good.
Okay.
I like it. All right. So lightning round, real quick. Bowers Development, they do own a whole wealth of properties. Only a few of them came from the city. So what the city can do with specific properties, sometimes they can't just claw them back. Some people think that. You asked specifically about the building next to the Fort Schuyler Club. Day one, okay, that property, and I will work with Bowers on this, and if they don't work with me on it, it's still going to happen. That's going to be boarded up, just like the Mayoral building, just like the building on Hotel Street. Not only will it be boarded up, but here's the issue with properties like that. We just had Hamilton College Week, okay? Tons of parents and kids walking up and down the street. You know what they were looking at? That building. If the building's boarded up, guess what can be on there? Just like New York City, all the playbills from Broadway. There's a lot of creative ways we can deal with developers like that, and that's what I'm gonna do. They need to be taken care of now, but the key is not getting into that situation again, and as mayor, I won't.
So, I mean, if we're obviously, we all agree, right? We're all going to be in agreement on this. It's an eyesore, it's terrible, we need to fix it. So I don't think there's anybody here who's going to have a lot of disagreement. But one of the things that we can do is look at our codes to see what kind of structural changes can we make so that you can't allow that to happen. If the front of your house, your private home, looked as bad as those buildings, we'd be citing you. So why aren't we citing them? Why can't we develop a permit system whereby you have to fix up the front before you're allowed to start fixing up the inside? We need also to crack down in general on vacant buildings, and we need to really take seriously the way in which vacant buildings hurt all of us.
Can I do a quick rebuttal? Quick?
Lightning round.
20 seconds?
No, there's no rebuttals. on
Okay,
that.
all right.
Everyone knows that.
Somebody is familiar with this.
And then there, and then there, and then we'll call it, okay? Okay.
Okay.
All right, you're first.
Okay, what are all your candidates' view on LGBTQ rights? A lot of cities are trying to restrict drag shows and stuff like that, like ban books and everything. I just want to know what your views are for the LGBTQ community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone can go first.
You want to go? You go. All right, then.
First of all, everybody should have the right to their freedom of expression and however they want to live. I don't think we dictate to anybody how they live. And as far as I'm concerned, there won't be any discrimination if I'm in office.
All right, good.
Absolutely not. Because discrimination is hatred, and hate crimes are not something that I submit to. So LGBT rights are going to be protected. All rights are going to be
All right,
protected.
good.
So.
Thank you.
All right. Likewise, it's freedom of speech, it's First Amendment protected rights, and absolutely everyone's a human. Humans on this earth should be able to live the way they want to live, free in this country to do what they please. Banning books? Absolutely not. I don't care what the book is, okay? We know people who have banned books in the past. Hitler was one of them, okay? We shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be doing it. You can't ban books. As far as drag shows, you just said?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be honest with you, if you're gonna wanna do a drag show at a grade school, in third grade,
No,
you know,
no.
exactly, I know you, we talk all the time,
Yeah,
exactly.
I would never do it.
But no one should be saying anything about something going on at the Uptown, the
Or that's like
Stanley,
we, Uptown
the
Stanley.
Players Theater, anywhere.
Yes, that's what we play.
What we wanna do, we should be doing, so thank you.
All right, that's all I want to know.
So I of course agree with all of that, but I think we need more drag shows, not fewer. Am I right,
Yeah.
Kevin? And we need more rainbow flags. I've been very proud to be involved in flying the rainbow flag over City Hall in June during Pride Month. So absolutely, this city we pride ourselves on accepting everyone. We should continue to do that, and we should make sure that that's expressed in our laws, not just what we say, but what we do, and protect and love each other.
Thank you.
And more drag shows if we could, please, Devin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
originally meant Heather, but I realized you both had a question. It's the same question? Oh, okay, go ahead.
Here's my question. We've talked about sidewalks, accessibility, blight, codes violation. We've got an example of that within a couple hundred yards of where we're sitting. The restaurant across the street has two out structures that are ugly. They attract people to use drugs in them, or litter in them, or do other things there. They block the sidewalk. And if you are a person with a disability, it's bad enough and difficult enough because of the nature of the sidewalk and where it is there to get, to navigate by that in the summer, and in the spring, and in the fall. In the winter, it's impossible. Now, Codes has basically said, because I raised this issue with them a couple of times, that there's nothing they can do about it. That it's a New York State Codes issue or some nonsense like that. The bottom line is, that makes us look ugly. It's also unsafe, it's also discriminatory. What do you think we can do about it?
So I believe that the issue is not, say, New York State codes. It is that the city unfortunately granted them a permit to build that and is now therefore hesitant to sort of undo it. And I think that the city and the administration, and if I'm the mayor, we need to we need to simply undo it. We need to issue an injunction for all the reasons that you said. It's unsafe. It discriminates against people with mobility issues. We need to issue an injunction that they need to remove it, and if they don't, we do.
They got permission when it was a business that was open, and it hasn't been open in what, 15, 20 years?
Yeah, it was Dandy Donuts.
Right, sure is.
Remember, it was Dandy Donuts?
That was good, Dandy
They
Donuts.
were very good donuts, yes, they were.
I wish they could come back again.
Dandy Donuts, there you go.
They were good. They were good.
They were good.
Yeah, the glazed donut. The glazed donut.
Okay. All right. No, it's okay. Hey, look, levity's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, let me just answer this question, and not on donuts. I agree 100%. I mean, and one thing that a mayor can do is, if you're forceful enough, you can make somebody's life pretty miserable. And I would do that. I mean, but there's somebody asked me a question about who would I compare myself to as a mayor. Some of you people may know, some of these people you may not. I'm a cross between Dick Casero, who could be as profound and as professional as he needed to be, and Edward A. Hanna, who, when you got to get something done, you got to get something done. All right? You can't take. You know, and look at it. And I think about the trash issue. Hanna would go around in his car and stop people and give them a ticket. I mean, he did. He actually did that stuff. So I think it needs to be done, and I think a mayor can be forceful when the time is necessary. So.
Thank you.
All right, so understanding the history of the situation is important. Councilperson Friend, I believe it was you who came to me with this when we were trying to work it out. And I had already looked into it and found that it was absolutely the city who worked with them on that. That's part of the problem. Second thing is codes. Codes did shut them down finally. That's why they're finally committing to putting a roof on the building. After they put a roof on the building, we may see something there. Now, I have to say, making someone's life miserable, I don't believe is the way to get that job done. As a mayor, I will work with that property owner in an open way to get that resolved. The problem is, the city embarked on one thing. They thought it was a great thing. They let them build that. They encouraged it. Then we started putting up telephone poles in front of it. The original agreement had people going around. And then as things progressed, other things were installed. When that happened, we should have readdressed it then. The current administration has just let it go. Now the whole thing needs to be addressed. The actual telephone pole, the other obstructions have to be taken into account. and I believe it's something we can absolutely resolve. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last question in the back.
You all gave elaborate examples of both paving and working with youth, increasing things that the district can do. The $64 million that was dropped 3 or 4 years ago on the city, to utilize that for certain things. Can you specifically talk about one project you either suggested or got through with that $64 million that answers some of those ideas about paving or youth participation? So I mean, Mike and Celeste, obviously from the legislative perspective, and Bob from the school board experience. Is there anything that you particularly suggested or got through as a project with that $64 million? Some of us saw a lot of it go in the park system, and we didn't see where other things went. So if you guys have specific examples that you could give?
Amen.
So that everybody understands, first of all, it was the administration's money to do with as they see fit, but each council district, not the at-large, but each council district was given $200,000 to work on projects of their own. And I met with constituents over and over again in order to sort of craft a plan with that. We are putting a whole lot of trees into South Utica, and we're also creating a traffic calming structure in the middle of the intersection at Eastwood and Dunham. So picture that if you can. You take a right just past Rose's, and it's a sea of asphalt, and people go screaming through that intersection because they can. And we're gonna create a small island in the middle, and we're also gonna be putting in a whole lot of sidewalks up there along Oneida Street where people walk a lot, and yet the sidewalks are in pretty bad shape. So that's what I'm doing with most of the $200,000 that the mayor assigned to me. I did encourage the mayor to help the Uptown put a new roof on, because that was a fundamental thing that they needed to do in order to carry on with the rehabilitation of their the main auditorium. So I think that the investments in our parks makes a lot of sense. The mayor's thinking, the administration's thinking around that was that we were specifically told by the federal government, this money should be spent in a way which gets us ready for the next pandemic. And given how much time people spent outside in our parks during the pandemic, we thought that it made sense, or they thought that it made sense, to bolster our parks in general. I don't like every last thing they did in the parks, but a lot of them are very good.
Okay.
In terms of the school district, you know that the school district and the administrations are totally separate. They're run independently, they're run separately, unlike Syracuse, which in Syracuse, the school district in Syracuse is part of the administration, like in New York City. Yeah. But it's an independent administration. And in terms of working together, we as a board have finally come to the ideas that we want to do certain things with the city and potentially open up buildings and have programs. The question's going to be always is the liability issue. It's something that we have to deal with, because again, we're separate entities, so there's a lot of issues that have to be dealt with. I'm a proponent of it. I think it's a great idea. I mean, I don't care if we can have basketball programs in some of these schools at night. These kids need something to do. Keep them off the streets. Keep them from thinking about doing something crazy like crime, like shooting somebody. This is what we have to do. We have to instill in our young people that there's something other than doing something wrong, doing something bad. And from a teaching perspective, say you want to ruin your life at 15 or 16, because you're going to ruin your life. You're going to be in jail. So, that's the perspective. And in terms of some of the money, the COVID money, my problem has been, I think it's wonderful to have a dog park. I think it's a good idea. But my question was, if you spend, I believe it's like $800,000 on dog parks, why didn't they do something with Hurt Park on Sunset Street, where I went over there and there's syringes on the floor, okay? This is where our kids play. This is where our kids, and I hate to, it's our minority kids, so they don't matter. So that's something that I think needed to be looked at. You take $50,000 out of that and put it over in Hurt Park. That's where it belonged, to help these kids. They're doing stuff over there now. Well, why are we doing it now? Summer's over. Okay, I brought it to their attention, and stuff got done. but it should have been done before.
Thank you.
All right, so before we get to specific things, I do want to mention that Celeste and I did vote on a piece of legislation that appropriated money to her park. I made a video about all the different parks. It's come up multiple times. We did. I think it was a little more than 50 grand. But something specific that I voted on one of the packages specifically for, and ended up not happening, which was a problem for me, was there was a project on James Street. We were supposed to create an impact center, just an impact center, that was going to be similar to the Renaissance Center that used to be behind the Aud, so that youth, underprivileged youth, people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds within the disadvantaged communities would have a place to go when they were younger to learn things, crafts, music, trades, read, an internet cafe, whatever would need to be there. That was ultimately turned into one of the housing projects as well. Now I'm working with Community Foundation and just conversations to make sure that that first floor still has that type of activity. Past that, I was extremely influential with the mayor in saying we need to do more paving. We did that with the ARPA money. We absolutely needed to maintain our firehouses. Okay, that is something that absolutely over the last 8 years, as I've been council president, I've wanted to prioritize, but as a mayor, I wasn't mayor, right? I couldn't do it. We need capital plans. We needed to lower the overall maintenance cost of this city. We did do some of those things, and it was in the form of purchasing vehicles for the fire department, different apparatus, actually maintaining the fire departments, doing work in the police department, multiple maintenance projects. After the actual packages were voted on, the administration did go in a different direction on certain things, but those are some things I had my hand on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we do have to call it because it's already 10 minutes past. While I still have your attention, I just want to thank the other side for letting us use this space and encourage you on your way out. If you are so inclined to make a contribution, there's a little jar up there just as a way to thank them for letting us be here and to help keep them open so they can continue to have public space for us to do stuff like this. And also reminding everyone there's a special session of SUNA next Monday here at 6 p.m. for one more forum, this time for Utica Common Council at-large candidates as well as Oneida County Legislator candidates, and we'll figure out how to divide that up somehow. And so thank you to these candidates for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here and staying an extra 10 minutes.